Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh-Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News, broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya studios. These are our top stories. A group of foreign ministers arrive in Istanbul to discuss the ongoing situation in Gaza. A 32-year-old man appears in court charged with 11 counts of attempted murder after a mass stabbing on a London-bound train. At least 20 people are dead and 120 injured after a 6.3 magnitude earthquake in Afghanistan. And Prince William travels to Rio for the Earthshot Prize as he hopes to put recent revelations about his uncle Andrew aside. Now, a group of foreign ministers have met in Turkey today to discuss the next steps in Gaza. Qatar, Egypt, Saudi Arabia and the UAE are among the countries represented in Istanbul. They're discussing the ceasefire and the humanitarian situation as they look towards the second stage of President Trump's peace plan. For more on this, I'm joined from Bodrum by retired Turkish ambassador Cengiz Firat. Thank you so much for your time this evening. I appreciate you joining us. Let's just talk a little bit about ahead of the meeting in Istanbul on Gaza. President Erdogan said Hamas is complying with the ceasefire. This comes despite the wrong remains of hostages being returned to Israel and videos of violence carried out by Hamas inside Gaza being shown. Is Erdogan correct in his view on Hamas, do you think?
I think quite a large extent, he's very correct in the sense that when you look at the results of the Sharm el-Sheikh meeting, the Palestinians had agreed, Hamas had agreed to give the remaining hostages, which they did. I think that was the biggest, how can I say it, the biggest thing they had in their hand vis-a-vis Israel. And they handed them over, and they're trying to find the rest of the remains of the other hostages who are presumed to be dead because of the bombardments. So when you look at it from the point of view of the Palestinians, yes, they have. When you look at it from the point of view of the people who are living there, the 2 million plus remaining people in Gaza, the agreement had said that you would have at least 600 trucks of humanitarian aid to be let into the Gaza Strip, which the Israeli side is not allowing. So from the Hamas point of view and from the Palestinians in general, all the Palestinians who live in Gaza, I think this agreement was very well received, and they're trying to do their best. Obviously, you can see on the ground that there's some fighting ongoing. From the report that I've been reading, I find that it's quite related to the issue of inter-Palestinian rivalry, because the Israelis had set up some Palestinian groups within Gaza to actually to fight against Hamas. And it looks like as if Hamas is both trying to regain security and stability in the Gaza Strip, and also they seem to be trying to weed out the opposing factions who opposed them and who fought alongside the Israelis during this horrendous period that we witnessed for the last 2 years.
And Turkey has been one of the most vocal critics of Israel's 2-year assault on Gaza. They've called it a genocide. Should Israel allow Turkish forces into Gaza to help implement the ceasefire deal, and also with the recovery of Gaza and finding those remaining hostages?
I think Turkey was not the only country that termed what happened in Gaza a genocide. It was horrendous. I think we're all in unison on this. What we witnessed for the last 2 years, starvation of children, using starvation as a tool of war, bombardment to a level that we haven't seen. From some reports, there was more bombing in that little strip than Nagasaki and Hiroshima put together. I can go on and on and on. So it is a genocide. International courts have termed this. The UN was on board on this. What happened is complete horrendous, complete massacre, genocide, call it whatever you like. It's complete one-sided, total destruction of another identity. Now, coming back to your question on where Turkey stands on this, yes, Turkey has been adamant from the beginning that there should be a ceasefire. And following a ceasefire, there should be a peace agreement. Turkey was one of the 4 countries that signed the agreement in Sharm el-Sheikh on the 23rd of September, if I'm not mistaken. And since then, we've been working very hard to get a group of the Muslim countries that were present in the Sharm el-Sheikh meeting, and 7 of them got together today in Istanbul. The idea is to make sure that the ceasefire holds, more humanitarian aid comes into Gaza, and the fighting should stop. I mean, since the ceasefire came into effect, more than 250 Palestinian people have died due to Israeli aggression. That is ongoing. You know, ceasefire, it's very fragile. Where Turkey stands, yes, we were one of the signatories, and we would like to back whatever the international community, whatever the signatories to this agreement, how they want to go forward. Some of the members of this group also want to have international legitimacy, whereby bringing in the UN into the system and having the Council, the Security Council decision on how the peace agreement will be implemented. Because some countries are saying that if you don't have a lasting peace, it's not the ceasefire that we are witnessing these days where on a daily basis, the Israelis are attacking the Palestinians, attacking Gaza, and people are dying, but a concrete ceasefire followed by a concrete plan where it's going to be backed by the United Nations. Some others are saying no. As far as we all recall, in Sharm el-Sheikh, President Trump had said, you know, we're going to be doing this outside the mandate of the UN.
Cengiz, sorry, I just want to interrupt you for one moment and just ask you if Turkish forces will be on the ground in Gaza. Will this happen? Will we see the Turkish army or Turkish stabilization force go into Gaza to help implement this peace deal that you are talking about?
We are ready and willing to support the Palestinians. We've signed the agreement, so we are behind this agreement. And if the international community will agree on a stabilization force, and if the mandate of the stabilization force agrees that Turkish troops will be allowed to go into Gaza, yes, then Turkish troops will go in. But of course, everything is being negotiated at the moment. We've heard that the Israeli side is not willing to accept Turkish troops in Gaza. Secretary of State Rubio had said this a couple of days ago, but the negotiations are ongoing, so we will see what will come out. It's an ongoing process. But as far as Turkish willingness is concerned, as far as Turkish readiness is concerned, yes, Turkey is ready. But even if troops are not on the ground, Turkey is ready for reconstruction, rebuilding, humanitarian assistance, and all the help that the Gazan Palestinians need.
Cengiz, Firat, always brilliant to have you on the show. Your analysis and thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I'm now joined by Dr. Einat Wilf, policy analyst and former member of the Israeli Parliament. Thank you so much for joining me on the show. I just want to start with Turkey is hosting This meeting today, several foreign ministers from Muslim-majority countries will be in Turkey to discuss the fragile ceasefire deal. President Trump has said the ceasefire is not fragile. What do you make of this?
Well, it remains to be seen. Right now, we're still in the first phase of the ceasefire. Israel is yet to receive the bodies of the remaining hostages, which were supposed to be handed over within 72 hours. So we're still stuck at this point. And I think it's been 700 hours since the Palestinians committed to releasing the bodies of the remaining hostages. So we're still stuck at this point. But even as we look into phase two includes some pretty dramatic language. Gaza will not be a threat to its neighbors, basically ever. Hamas has to be disarmed completely. The Palestinian Authority de-radicalized. The Palestinians in Gaza de-radicalized. Everyone likes to place emphasis on reconstruction, but it makes exactly zero sense to pump billions more if the ideology of the people of Gaza remains the same ideology that it was before October 7th, and which inspired the invasion and massacre, the ideology of no sovereign Jewish state anywhere between the river and the sea. It makes no sense to invest $1 in Gaza before people know that the ideology, just like that of Nazi Germany or Imperial Japan, has been defeated.
So you talk about the ideology of the Palestinians to me there, and my guest just before you was the former Turkish ambassador, and Turkey have said what Israel has done inside of Gaza amounts to a genocide, and the world has seen Israel continue to bomb Gaza even as the ceasefire did come into effect. What is Israel's plan to get rid of the so-called ideology? How do you even begin to do that? Do you just completely destroy Gaza and drive the people out?
So before we discuss all the libels, let's understand what the Palestinians have built in Gaza using billions of dollars from the world and tremendous goodwill, and I would say Israeli gullibility, thinking that they really only wanted to take care of themselves. What they built in Gaza is a single integrated weaponized landscape where all of Gaza is connected by now we know 1,000 kilometers of tunnels, hundreds of piers that connect every school, every mosque, home, kindergarten, house, all of them with essentially a force that has made it its doctrine not to abide by the rules of war. The rules of war have a basic distinction, a distinction between militant, combatant, and civilian. The Gazans make war by essentially erasing that distinction. And if you look at it, military experts have had to compare it to an island in the Philippines during World War II, where tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people were killed in war, or to compare it to ancient fortresses. The people of Gaza have made an ideological choice to turn one of the most beautiful and most geographical areas that have everything necessary to be a global hub of commerce and export and tourism. They made the choice to turn it into a single integrated weapon of war. By every military measure, Israel has waged this war in a way that is exemplary. If you look at the civilian to combatant ratio, as much as the Palestinians try to erase it, it's at most 1-2, under conditions where the world even refused to allow the civilians who didn't want to be in the zone of war. Egypt and other countries did not allow them to leave. Under those conditions, what Israel has achieved, and given the way that the Palestinians have weaponized Gaza, it's exemplary. But beyond that, to change an ideology, you do exactly as you did with Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. You need the people to ultimately understand that their ideology, that their choice to prioritize destroying the Jewish state over building for themselves has led to ruin. As in personal lives and collective lives, moments of ruin allow you to begin to reconsider that your ideas are not good.
So, Doctor,
And the idea of Palestinians that it's more important to destroy what the Jews have built rather than to build for themselves has only brought ruin to this region for over a century.
So I think a lot of people listening to my show this evening, and of course you as a guest, will be thinking they've watched their television screens for 2 years now. They've seen people starving in Gaza. Thousands and thousands of people have died. It's been absolutely horrendous footage, but we're not talking about every single Palestinian with an ideology. We're talking about women. We're talking about innocent children. And this is something that the world has had to witness. And it's very difficult for a lot of the world to try to understand that and the disproportion that the Palestinians have faced. What do you say to those people who are watching this show right now, who've seen famine, who've seen starving people, who've seen people being shot as they try to get aid? These are innocent Palestinians. Not all of them are part of Hamas and part of a radical ideology.
So first, we know by now, just like the genocide libel, so is the famine libel. But beyond that, wars are fought on a collective basis. The Americans in December 1941 did not declare war on Japanese pilots. They declared war on Japan. Britain declared war on Germany until Germany surrendered. And Germany was occupied and dismembered, and it handed over land, and millions were displaced. And of course, not every single German was a Nazi. Not every single Japanese believed in imperial racial supremacy. But wars are fought on a collective basis, and peace is made on a collective basis. So ultimately, it is the Palestinians as a people, as a collective, who have tragically been organized around a terrible ideology that has prioritized for generations destroying what the Jews have built over building for themselves, an ideology that has led them to repeated ruinous wars. It is high time that they understood that this is a terrible ideology and begin, just like the Germans, just like the Japanese, to begin to become a people who want to live next to the Jewish state rather than on its ruins from the river to the sea.
Dr. Einat Wilf, thank you so much for joining me. A 32-year-old man has appeared in court today, charged with 11 accounts of attempted murder after a mass stabbing on a London-bound train this weekend. Anthony Williams was arrested on Saturday after an attack on the LNER service. A British train worker is said to be in a critical but stable condition. Here's how locals did react to that tragic incident.
It will affect lots of people today. I mean, I've had family using the train line just the day before, so they could have been on that train easily. I've got a lot of family up at Peterborough as well, so we tend to use the trains a lot to get up there as well, and like I mentioned to you before, we use it to get into London occasionally as well. Yeah, it's going to impact a lot of people, this, for sure, but it's, yeah, not good.
A horrifying incident like this can actually make people think twice about the things that influence them and the things we glorify, like violence and things. It's absolutely unacceptable, and it's got no place in society generally.
For more on this, I'm joined from London by our correspondent, Ollie Barrett. Ollie, always great to have you on the show. Let's begin with the suspect. What has he been charged with?
Well, Leigh-Ann, he's been charged with 10 counts of attempted murder related to the incident that unfolded on the train as it passed through Cambridgeshire at the weekend. 1 count of actual bodily harm, and we're told that this relates to an alleged assault on a police official in a custody suite, and also a charge of possession of a knife as well. There is 1 further charge of attempted murder, but that relates, we're told, to a separate incident which unfolded in London at another station on the transport network hours before the incident on the train that was passing past Huntingdon and called in there when the incident started to unfold. So a series of charges against 32-year-old Anthony Williams, which he has heard in court for his first appearance in court today. A very short court appearance, that one, procedural really. He has been remanded in custody, Leigh-Ann, and will appear next in court on December the 1st at Cambridge Crown Court.
And Ollie, what more do we know about how the incident unfolded on Saturday night?
Well, details are emerging on an ongoing basis, partly because we're hearing from eyewitnesses, and they really do describe an absolutely terrifying scene with the suspect rampaging really through the carriages, attempting to stab people and certainly slashing a number of people. And we did see 11 people requiring hospital treatment in total. We've also been hearing tales of passengers barricading themselves in bathrooms, trying to barricade themselves in the buffet car, and we've also been hearing tales of real heroism from a number of people, but particularly one of the train staff members, who is now the individual that is still, we're told, in a critical but stable condition in hospital. In fact, the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, is on her feet in the House of Commons as we speak, and she has described him as a hero and says he forever will be, and says he has received what she described as grievous injuries. As the incident started to unfold, the driver was able to be in contact with police and therefore within minutes had called in an unscheduled stop at Huntingdon Station. It was there that police were able to arrest the suspect and another suspect as well, although that second person has now been released without charge and police say wasn't involved in this attack in any way. Also worth saying, Leigh-Ann, that today police have confirmed that they are looking into 3 other episodes which may be related to this particular case and this particular individual. 2 appearances, we're told, at a barber shop in the Peterborough area on Friday and Saturday. A man said to have a knife, and police were called, but by the time they had taken the call or arrived, the suspect, the individual, had left. But also the stabbing of a 14-year-old boy in Peterborough over the weekend as well, and police have confirmed they are looking into whether all of those episodes are linked in some way.
And Oliver, this is an absolutely terrifying moment for many people who use the transport network across England. What are authorities saying about whether safety can be increased across the transport network in light of events that we've seen over the weekend?
Well, Leigh-Ann, in the short term, we are seeing a raised, visible, robust policing presence across the transport network. There are more officers on duty at transport hubs than would normally be the case. And that is partly just to reassure the travelling public, even though police are confident that this incident was limited in the sense that they don't believe there's any current further danger as a result of this incident to the travelling public. There has been some debate since the incident about whether there should be further safety measures put in place across the transport network, such as arches for knives or weapons, for example, at train stations. I think the government believes that that would be too onerous, too expensive, would be too burdensome for commuters and travellers alike to put that kind of measure in place, but certainly questions for the government about whether there do need to be further safety checks or measures in place in different parts of the transport network. But as I say, in the short term, we are seeing over the course of today and probably the next couple of days that raised, visible security presence at transport hubs.
Ollie Barrett in London, thank you so much for joining us. Now, at least 20 people are dead and hundreds are injured after a magnitude 6.3 earthquake struck northern Afghanistan. Local officials say the death toll is expected to rise as rescue efforts do continue. Patrick Falk reports.
In Tangi-Tashkagan district in northern Afghanistan, there was widespread damage. The region lies around 60 kilometers to the east of Mazar-e-Sharif, epicenter of the quake and home to about 500,000 people. Videos shot by local media showed burning vehicles and people stretching bodies away from the rubble. In the darkness, rescuers relied on torchlights to find people buried under collapsed structures. In Samangan province, recovery efforts got underway by day. The buildings here stood no chance against an earthquake. Many of them were obliterated.
The earthquake started around 1 a.m. It shook so violently that we couldn't even open the door. We tried 3 times to unlock it, but the shaking was too strong to manage. It lasted for about 15 seconds, and when we finally got outside, there was so much dust in the air that we couldn't see anything. My mother was trapped under the wooden beams of the roof, and my brother was buried under the rubble. With the help of the villagers and young men from our village, thank God, we managed to rescue them. They are now in the hospital.
The quake also led to a power outage across the country, including in the capital, Kabul. Reports say electricity lines from Uzbekistan and Tajikistan, both major suppliers of power to Afghanistan, suffered damage. It'll take time before the full death toll emerges, but officials say significant casualties are likely.
I rescued my brother's wife along with the rest of the family, but one of us was missing. I searched desperately to find him and later realized he was trapped under the rubble. Unfortunately, he had passed away.
A Taliban spokesperson posted video that appeared to show debris strewn across the Blue Mosque. Built in the 15th century, it's a site that's revered by Shia Muslims. Afghanistan is prone to earthquakes because of its location on top of a number of fault lines. The quake follows another deadly 6.0 magnitude earthquake that struck the country's east in August, killing more than 1,000 people. Patrick Falk, Al Arabiya, English.
Let's take a look at some of the other stories making the headlines today. Ukraine has been pressing for the US for long-range Tomahawk missiles, but President Trump says he's not really considering sending them for now. Instead, Kyiv is receiving more Patriot air defense systems to counter Russia's ongoing attacks. This comes after Russian drones killed a man and injured 5 members of his family overnight, as missile and drone strikes continue to target civilians and critical infrastructure. The only survivor of the Air India crash that killed 241 people says he feels lucky to be alive, but is struggling with the trauma and loss. Vishwash Kumar Ramesh, who escaped the burning plane, says he can't talk to his family and suffers from PTSD. His advisors have accused Air India of neglect, while the airline says it's supporting victims' families. President Trump has downplayed the chance of war with Venezuela, but suggested Nicolas Maduro's days are indeed numbered. Trump defended the ongoing US strikes on alleged drug smuggling boats in the Caribbean. He also refused to rule out future land strikes, while doubling down on his call to resume nuclear weapons testing to keep peace with Russia and China. Hurricane Melissa has killed at least 28 people in Jamaica, leaving widespread destruction in its wake. Winds reached 185 miles per hour, toppling homes and blocking roads across the Caribbean. Relief efforts are underway, with the UK sending emergency aid and repatriation flights for stranded citizens. In Haiti, at least 25 more people died after flooding from the Lalduing River. And US airports are facing major delays as nearly 13,000 air traffic controllers are working without pay during the federal government shutdown. Newark Airport issued a ground stop with average delays over 3 hours, and cancellations are expected nationwide. The US government has been shut down for 33 days. Now, Prince William has travelled to Rio de Janeiro today for the 5th annual Earthshot Prize award, focused on finding environmental solutions. The British heir to the throne arrives in Brazil ahead of COP30 later this week. Both events come amid further revelations regarding his uncle Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, who was recently stripped of his royal titles. Speaking on board Air Force One, President Trump shared his sympathy with the royal family.
I feel very badly. I mean, it's a terrible thing that's happened to the family. That's been a tragic situation, and it's too bad. I mean, I feel badly for the family.
We can now cross over to Cambridgeshire to speak to Royal Correspondent Sarah Hewson. Sarah, thank you so much for joining me. So we just heard from President Donald Trump there, who's weighed in on the biggest royal scandal in so many years. Is he right to feel sorry for the family after more details of Andrew's relationship with sex offender Jeffrey Epstein emerged?
Hello to you, Leigh-Ann. Well, it's a really interesting intervention by President Trump, isn't it? And we know that he is very fond of the King and the royal family. And it is his statement of sympathy to them. But I think for the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, the families of the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, these comments are likely to generate anger because he has not expressed such sentiments of sympathy towards Epstein's victims at any point. And Trump, of course, is facing many questions himself about his own links to Epstein. He once described Jeff, as he called him, as a terrific guy. He said that he likes women as much as I do, and many of them on the younger side. And he's also coming under increasing pressure to release the Epstein files, not least of all from the family of Virginia Giuffre, who say that President Trump should follow in the King's lead and actually front up to this Epstein scandal and do something about it. Such are the calls for transparency. So I think these comments made today, again, off the cuff, Trump speaking on Air Force One, expressing his sympathy for the family, but they jar for many, I think.
Yes, Sarah, and you're right, because many people are still asking the question, where are the Epstein files? But let's focus on the UK Defence Secretary, because he's looking to strip Andrew of his last remaining military rank. Let's be honest, things are just getting worse for Andrew. What more do we know at this stage?
Another week, Leigh-Ann, and yet more headlines for Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. Stripped last week of all vestiges of royal life. And now the Defence Secretary in the UK, John Healey, looking at whether he can strip Andrew of his last remaining military title. That's the Honorary Vice Admiral of the Royal Navy. He lost most of those military titles back in 2022, but this is the last one remaining. And even more damaging to Andrew is the suggestion that they could also strip him of his Falklands Campaign Medal that was awarded to him after his service in the Falklands War, when he came back a war hero. And I think for Andrew, there's been an awful lot of damage to him, for someone who places such high esteem on titles and on status. But these military titles and the loss of those, and if he does lose that Falklands Campaign Medal, that will really sting.
And let's talk a little bit about Prince William, because do you think he'll be able to drag attention away from Andrew during his Brazil visit for his Earthshot Prize event, which is arguably the most important week of his year? And we do know that William loves and cherishes this event, Sarah.
Yeah, this is often what's described as William's Super Bowl moment. The Earthshot Awards and his work around homelessness are his two big legacy projects. And all of the work that he does around Earthshot culminates in this Earthshot Prize ceremony, which is taking place on Wednesday in Brazil. He's arrived there today, and he really wants the focus to be on his work around climate action. He wants to put it back to the good work that the royal family is doing without the distractions of his his disgraced uncle. And so I think the timing of the statement from Buckingham Palace last Thursday was important. They wanted to get this out there and dealt with so that it didn't overshadow William's work this week. And it is a really important week, not just the Earthshot Prize this week, but also William addressing the COP30 Summit at the end of the week, a role that was previously performed by his father, and a speech which he has discussed and collaborated with his father over the past few weeks. A very high profile moment for William, and again seeing him in that global statesman role. That's what he wants us to see this week, not more headlines about Andrew.
And let's just turn our attention to where does Sarah Ferguson go now? And of course, we know Fergie and the Queen's corgis are quite close, and they've been at a royal lodge since the death of the Queen. Any information about what's going on there?
Well, firstly, for Fergie, we know she's going to make her own arrangements. What might that be? She's not going to be living with Andrew, we understand, on the Sandringham estate. Where might she go? Well, she has recently sold a property in Belgravia in London for nearly £4 million. She has ties to Switzerland. They previously owned a chalet there. She could, of course, head to the United States, where she's previously been, where after scandal, and of course to Abu Dhabi as well, where Andrew and Fergie and their daughters have been given access to a palace there. So there are options for Sarah Ferguson, and it's been reported that she wants to distance herself from Andrew, to regroup and to rebuild her brand as a mother and a philanthropist. Although at the moment it feels too toxic for many brands to get involved with her. As for the corgis, Sandy and Mick, these were the late Queen's much-loved corgis. After her death, they were adopted by Andrew and Sarah. They've been living at Royal Lodge. Buckingham Palace say that the corgis are going to remain with the family. Now, it's not clear what that means, whether they'll be with Andrew in Sandringham, whether they'll be with Sarah, or whether they'll be with either Princess Beatrice or Princess Eugenie and their family. But they are to remain within the former York family.
I'm always happy to take the corgis if there's nowhere else for them to go. 4 dogs. I could definitely cope with that. Sarah Hewson, thank you so much.
Thank you. I think they'll have plenty of takers.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Let's take a look at the top business news now. President Trump has denied knowing Changpeng Zhao despite pardoning the cryptocurrency tycoon last month. Zhao, who served 4 months in prison, pleaded guilty to violating US money laundering laws. The company he founded, Binance, was ordered to pay $4.3 billion after a probe found it helped users bypass sanctions. Ryanair's profits jumped 40% between April and September following significant fare increases at Europe's largest airline. The airline expects to fly 207 million passengers after its Boeing delivers 23 new MAX 8 aircrafts. Ryanair CEO said improved deliveries by Boeing enabled the business to add capacity for the current quarter. Turning to all the sports news now, and Barcelona have bounced back in La Liga after a 3-1 win over Elche. Marcus Rashford's goal moved Barca back to second spot in the table. Barcelona's board planned to make the 27-year-old permanent on the team. However, Rashford, who's been loaned from Manchester United, would have to agree to a major salary cut if he does choose to join the Catalonian side. And India have won the Women's Cricket World Cup for the first time with a 52-run victory over South Africa. Winning at home in Mumbai gave the team its first major women's cricket title. South Africa's 246 score confirmed their third successive final defeat after losing the previous 2 T20 finals. A reminder of our top stories. A group of foreign ministers arrive in Istanbul to discuss the ongoing situation in Gaza. A 32-year-old man appears in court charged with 11 counts of attempted murder after a mass stabbing on a London-bound train. At least 20 people are dead and 120 injured after a 6.3 magnitude earthquake in Afghanistan. And Prince William travels to Rio for the Earthshot Prize as he hopes to put recent revelations about his uncle Andrew aside. And that's all from us on W News. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also follow us on X. And we'll be back in a couple of hours' time with a W News Extra. Goodbye and thank you.